Oh, you're recording already. Good evening, everyone. My name is Maria Ortiz, co-chair of Housing, Health, and Human Services. So this is our November monthly meeting, and tonight the agenda is public. It's on the website. Just some housekeeping things. The meeting's recorded and it's accessible on YouTube. It's live streaming right now. Everyone's going to stay muted throughout the meeting except for whoever's speaking. We're going to have, as you can look, you'll see on the agenda, we have 3 items that we're going to be talking about. After whoever is speaking, what happens is the presenter speaks, the committee members will speak by asking questions or comment, then the members of the public or the attendees will have the opportunity to do the same. The discussion goes back to the committee. On some items, the committee members vote to write a letter of support or to make recommendations. The most important thing for you to know is if you want to comment or ask questions, to please raise your hand. You'll see a button to do that. And if you're calling in, you have to press *9 to raise your hand. And it's *6 to unmute. I see we have 17 attendees. Does anybody have any questions right now about the process? It looks like Daniel has a question. You unmuted him or?
Okay, I just want to know, should I be visible on the screen at this moment? Because I'm not seeing that at all, as well as other people that I know should be at this meeting, so.
I'm sorry, Joe, we can't hear you, you're on mute.
Sorry. No, we'll bring you in as we start taking questions from the public.
That's fine, thank you.
Yeah.
That was a good question. I will clarify that next time. Thanks, Daniel. Okay, so since we have no other questions, we can jump right into the agenda. The first thing on the agenda is the Gotham utility credit issue. And I should share with everyone that I am a resident who lives in a Gotham building, so I am not able to really to participate in the conversation a whole lot. If we do write a letter, I would be present and not eligible.
So in a normal meeting,
conflict.
Yeah, in a normal meeting circumstance, Maria having a conflict of interest, she'd get up from the main table, she would sit in the audience, she could listen, she could ask questions, and then participate as part of the discussion, but not actually leave the discussion at all. So because we don't have a table and we're all in the same room, Maria noted her conflict of interest for the public. Thank you very much, Maria. So we're going to start with this matter, and I'm first going to just frame the item here, excuse me, from some reps from Gotham, and then hear from the public on it. And want to note the following issues. This matter was brought to us a while ago. It has definitely not been attended to in the normal way we would because of COVID. There was a confusion about a letter that Gotham responded to the board. Public should know that the community board has relocated from 330 West 42nd Street to 424 West 33rd Street in the middle of the pandemic. And there's lots of issues with the mail and communication. And we've had a lot of letters not reach the board that were sent in a timely fashion, besides the fact of the problems with the mail in general in the country. So we are behind the 8 ball a little bit on this, and the board had its first opportunity today to get some briefing by Gotham about the issue. And out of it, we have asked Gotham to produce a great number of documents because the board wants to make an independent evaluation of what it presented to us regarding this question of utility credit. I'll just frame it in general. This concerns 3 buildings, the Atlas, the Nicole, and Gotham West. All of those buildings received tenants signed leases, and on those leases, there was a utility credit. It is very unclear because we need to have this information directly. All buildings are subject to regulatory agreements. Those regulatory agreements are written by either state or city agencies that explicitly say what the rent is and what the rent includes. We've asked for copies of all that information in order to review it and evaluate it, and also work with HCC on this matter. Housing Conservation Coordinator has represented some of the tenants who have brought actions. The last piece I want to note, and Gotham will speak to this, we were quite surprised today, given that it affects so many tenants, that this was not discussed in a public manner, transparent, broad. So just from my notes, let me just note for everybody that this affects 650 tenants at Gotham West, 75 at the Atlas, and 30 at the Nicole. That's a significant number of people affected by this that you should have had a public discussion, and we should have worked this through entirely in a public manner. JD, did I miss anything from our report from this morning? You're on mute.
Joe, I'm not sure. Did you say 600?
At Gotham West, it's 650.
I thought it was 250.
No, it's 249 in the low income and 433 in the middle income, 75 at Atlas and 30 at the Nicole.
Thank you, Joe.
JD, you were on our earlier discussion. Did I miss anything in terms of characterizing what we learned this morning?
No, you did not. The only thing, there was a concern, at least I raised, that we were also concerned about the effect it would have on some residents. I think that's something that we, at some point, we'd like to know about. And also, the other thing, Joe, maybe you said it, we wanted to know when they found the error.
Right. So there's a whole question about, is it an error? Is it not an error? That's the matter in dispute. We really do not feel at this point qualified to make a determination without having all this original documentation. And then we'd like to take this up again in the coming months. But we'd like to tonight hear first from Gotham, and then we'd like to hear from tenants who are involved in this, so we get everyone's perspective. So could we first hear Nellie from the reps from Gotham? Are they on?
I see Melissa. Hold on a second.
And Varun, or just Melissa?
Melissa?
Hi. I'm not really sure what additional updates I can provide other than what you just went over. That was pretty thorough. Gotham is committed to providing documentation to help you guys kind of sort through the problem on your own, and is looking forward to working with the board to forge a path forward that's more transparent and considers impact on the tenants.
Yes, our main concern is that we get documents so we understand what they said. We get documents to understand what happened. And then with Gotham, jointly and the elected officials, we need to work with the various regulatory agencies to understand how this gets settled.
Joe, I'm sorry. Can we be introduced to who Melissa is and who she's representing?
I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Melissa Rosenberg. I work at Cassier, so we do community and government relations for Gotham.
Anyone else from Gotham in the meeting just wants to say anything before we go to the tenants?
I don't know if Chris is on. I don't think he is, but you know, they're happy to continue to work with you guys. I think it just didn't work out for this evening. So sorry about that.
Joe, another question. We're going to tenants first before any comments, because I already have a comment based on that response.
Yes, let's do comments then from the committee. Dolores?
Melissa, with all due respect, I really don't understand the response of, we want to work with you so you can work it out. There's
I'm sorry, let me take that, because this is a basically a response that the board gave to Gotham today. We, as a board, don't have the documents and information we need to even begin to understand this.
No, I understand. I have a different point, Joe. I have a different point. As a person, as a renter, there's a lease and it's signed every year and it has information. When there have been mistakes by whoever is the rental agent or the owner, et cetera, those mistakes are usually eaten by the owner, because you sign on a yearly basis a contract with all of that information. I just find it very fascinating that there is even a question about whether or not to ensure that those residents still don't have the ability to have what was originally signed upon honored going forward, because their understanding was the type of rebate that or break that they were getting in their rent.
That's because you live in a building that is strictly governed by rent stabilization. These buildings have an additional layer of regulation through regulatory agreements that are part of the financing that created the subsidy for the units. Those regulatory agreements are very specific about rents, how things get charged. And that's the question we have to understand. It's not just, when we started to unpack this today, if it was just that, yes, that's the answer. Unfortunately, there's a couple of layers here, and we want to understand those layers before the board even opines on it. That's why we want to hear from the tenants.
Joe, I would just add, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Gotham is going to continue those agreements until this is all sorted out.
Yes, that was the discussion we had today, that in fact, the status quo would remain in place until we as a board with the elected officials and the various tenants go through this, understand it, and then can opine on it. Katie?
I recall when this was first raised a couple of months ago, that, but I could be wrong here, but that it seemed like that it applied to some tenants, but not other tenants. In other words, like maybe some were getting it sounds like some were paying or receiving the benefit and others weren't. Is that still our impression, or is it that we think all tenants are in the same boat, whatever the boat is?
The issue is that when leases were renewed, in some cases, this credit was withdrawn, and that became a matter of dispute. So some tenants were receiving it, some were not. And because we have such a large body of tenants here, we really want to understand the full picture on it. So everyone gets, no matter what, the goal is we understand it, we opine on it, and everyone gets treated in the exact same manner. That's the important thing here.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Jessica?
Maybe I'm being dense, but is the suggestion that Gotham themselves doesn't know if there's a rationale for how this has been applied?
No, Gotham's claim is that in fact, their prior managing agent who had the building for many years, who no longer manages, and in some cases prior to that, just applied this utility credit in the wrong manner. That's their claim. So that's why we have to understand what that means. We really can't. It's just such a unique circumstance here. We have to get information about it.
That presumably Gotham should also want.
Gotham has information, and their claim is in fact that this credit was applied twice. We don't know enough to say it was or it wasn't, but we do know enough that when this was found out, instead of coming to the community board or elected officials and having a broad open discussion about some issue, they began to then litigate it or have questions with tenants. And that's not the way to go when you have this many tenants involved in it, all in projects that receive community support one way or the other.
Okay, thank you.
From the committee, other questions? Hector?
I think I kind of shared the same sentiment that Dolores had, but I won't get too much into it. I kind of get it, what you've already established, that we need more information. It just sounded a little standoffish the way she presented it, that we need to figure it out on our own, that kind of thing. I think maybe it was just a full wording, maybe. But we're all here to try to work it out and figure this all out, okay? So let's all try to get this done.
Paul, you're on mute.
Yeah, just a quick question. Right or wrong, what are the dollar amounts we're talking about? What's the size of the credit?
It varies by household because
Yeah.
it affects both low income, it affects majority low income housing tax credit tenants.
Yeah.
And those amounts are set by a standard from the federal government. So, this is over a period of years. Now, Gotham represented today that no matter what, they're not seeking to reclaim any of this. It's about everything going forward.
Good.
But even so, it's going to vary by apartment size or household size.
I'm just in the broadest possible, guesstimate range. What kind of percentage are we talking about of a credit?
It's not really percentage. It's like I would say between $40 and $90 or more per month,
Right.
depending.
That's thank you.
Leslie?
Is there federal or state oversight on this?
Yes, and that's one of the things we raised today. There is not federal oversight. The utility credit comes from the state, from the feds as a standard, but the oversight is at more than one location because some of the projects were financed through state funded mortgages, other through city funded mortgages. and re-raise to Gotham, if there's an issue, why didn't the state or the city in its reporting find this? That's an open question we have. So we really want to bring those agencies into this discussion too. It's clear that it's going to be state, city agencies, the owner, community board, elected officials, and tenants. So it's, for expectations, it's going to be quite a complex thing to unravel. Other questions from the committee before we go to tenants? Okay, then let's go to tenants. If you can raise your hand, and then Nellie will let you in one by one.
Okay, I have Daniel.
Okay, hello, everybody, and thank you very much for your time. I just want to state at the outset that I'm a Tier 3 tenant in Gotham West, which means that I am in the moderate middle income group. And I was informed that I was not entitled to utility credit because of that status, and that it was given to me in my original lease and in subsequent leases as an error, as a mistake. So I would just like to point out some things, if I can, succinctly. In correcting the mistake, Gotham is reneging on the stated rents in our original applications, in our original lottery applications that we filled out, signed and returned from 2011 to 2013. In correcting the mistake, Gotham is ignoring the terms and conditions of our original lease, which includes a utility allowance, sometimes called the utility credit, and that in that original lease, there was no mention that the utility credit was temporary. The utility allowance was temporary. In correcting the mistake, Gotham is jumping up our rents significantly past the Rent Guidelines Board approved increases, and that increase above the approval from the Rent Guidelines Board varies, at least in Gotham West, from $57 to $70 per month. Every tenant has received, excuse me, a utility allowance. And lastly, if Gotham West is permitted to do this, what will prevent Gotham from locating, excuse me, another mistake and offering it as an excuse to jump up our rents yet again in the future? And I don't have anything else to add beyond that.
Daniel, just a quick question. You mentioned that the rents, your first lease was, of course, the rent from the lottery for this building, right?
That's right.
And that lottery notice included the utility allowance in it?
It did, without mention that it included a utility allowance. So for example, my initial rent in 2013 was $1,623 for a studio apartment in Tier 3. I did not know until the point that I signed the lease and went in to speak with the Rose Associates leasing agency that that included a $57 per month utility credit. Yes.
So that 16, that number, when you signed your lease, did you sign your lease for a lesser amount, or that number stayed in there and then the credit?
I signed the lease. It stated $1,680 legal rent, and I might add, not preferential rate. It is a legal rent.
Right.
$1,680 legal rent minus $57 for a utility allowance. And I was informed at that point, or shortly afterward, excuse me, that that amount would be extracted from our rent amount when it came time to compute the Rent Guidelines Board approved increase. So in other words, when I got my first increase 2 years later, it was based on $1,680 and not based on $1,623. I did not dispute that or have any issue with that because it was such a small amount. But it was only at the time that I signed the lease that I learned that my $1,623 per month rent included a utility allowance. But I was not even informed at that particular moment that that was removable or temporary. There was nothing in the original lease, no temporary rent concession rider in the original lease that informed me that this was a temporary component of my rent.
So we're going to need, Nellie, just take some notes. We're going to get the original notice on the lottery as part of the documents we need here, so we can verify all this. because that just sort of sets the stage as to what this thing means. Daniel, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Who's next, Nellie?
Next, I have Jesus Cortez.
Jesus, unmute. Yep.
Yes. Hi, good evening, everybody. I feel as though as we're in a mock trial, so I'm gonna go ahead and state my case as follows. I'm here to speak about the issue of a utility credit that has been taken away from.
Can you first tell us where you live?
Yeah, I'm a tenant at the Nicole.
Okay,
from
good.
the Nicole.
Thank you. Right.
So that has been taken away, to my understanding, for more than 100 several households under the affordable housing tenancy at several properties owned by the Gotham property. This issue has grown in scope, and as per the tenants, we have continued and will continue to solicit and involve multiple resources, local officials, community groups, and the community board as we are this evening, in hopes that you could put and help put some pressure on Gotham to reinstate this credit. As of today, Thursday, November 19th, 2020, no resolution or reinstatement of the credit has actually happened. I am also here on behalf of the tenants from the Nicole. I believe that the Nicole was one of Gotham's last acquisitions, and so we're the last group to be able to chime in on this issue. And so if I may, I'd like to take you guys through several facts of my personal experience with this utility credit issue, if that's okay with everyone.
When did you move in?
So the first fact is I am a tenant of the Nicole since February 2004. Fact, since my tenancy, there has always been a utility credit attached to my lease. Fact, since my tenancy, the management of the Nicole has passed through 3 different hands. First PRC, Rose Associates, and now Gotham. Fact, throughout the different managements, I have received the utility credit every month of every year until this past January of 2020, when to my surprise, the utility credit was not stated on my monthly statement as it always had been since February of 2004.
Was this upon lease renewal?
Yes. Fact, when I reached out to the Nicole management, inquiring as to the missing utility credit, I was told by Ms. Benson, who was the property manager, that this was a courtesy credit and that it was no longer being offered by Nicole's management. But she assured me that I was receiving the correct utility allowance that is an attachment to my current lease, and that, you know, and that was it. And so that I was supposed to just sit there and accept that. Another fact is that Ms. Benson never, ever in the course of that conversation explained to me that I had the opportunities to seek other offices to bring this grievance to. And offices, I am talking about the ORA and or the DHRC, which I found out through my own research as listening to different other tenants, namely Gotham West, as to what these offices were about and why I should make a complaint to them. So she never mentioned that. She never gave me the opportunity of that information. Gotham, another fact is that Gotham stated in response to a letter written and sent to them by this community board, that they assured everyone, every tenant, that was inquiring about the utility credit, that they would be informed as to what they should do next and who they needed to contact to further the inquiry. And as I stated before, this was not the case. Fact, Gotham, in that same letter, also stated that they would definitely not take into consideration the reinstatement of the utility credit to the tenants of the Nicole, that we needed to contact these alleged offices, the ORA and the DHR, and make a complaint to them. And as of today, that has proven, nil. Nothing has come from anybody making a complaint, as far as I understand the issues as they stand now. So in finishing, I came here tonight to state these facts on behalf of myself and my fellow tenants here at the Nicole and all the other tenants that are involved in this issue, and in hopes that we can continue to fight this injustice that has befallen us, because whether it's $50 to $90, that's money that's being taken out of each household's pocket. And it's something that was instilled from the beginning of the tenancy. And just as the other gentleman stated before, there was no letter that was sent out to give us any forewarning. There was no real solid indication as to a reason why this was being taken away. And it's just ridiculous when it comes to an issue that is very black and white on paper. And for the Gotham to sort of go ahead and do this without any information going out to the tenants that it's going to affect is just unacceptable, especially in these times that we're living in.
So-
With everything that we have up against us, they have the nerve to come and take this utility credit. And as far as I know, this began for me in January of 2020, as I stated before. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and I look forward to keep the fight going.
So I just want to note that it is clear, and the board made this clear today, that the communication and how this is handled was absolutely horrific. And that's one of our concerns that we want this to get figured out in a comprehensive way and not have people getting different information or not understanding. But I also want to note, this committee very rarely deals with black and white, even when it seems very black and white. So that's why we want to get all the information to be able to take the right position to assist everybody.
Thank you.
Go to the next person.
The next person is Elise Levy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elise Levy, and I'm a tenant organizer at Housing Conservation Coordinators. I'm going to make this pretty brief, as I feel like a lot of the facts of the communication and the issues therein have really been hit on by the tenants already. But I just do want to mention, I think it's really important to note that, as Gotham was already dealing with complaints from tenants in Gotham West and already reinstating those credits based on ORA complaints, based on HCR complaints, they were still revoking that credit from tenants in other buildings. And that just indicates to us and to the tenants some, real poor judgment and disrespect for the tenants and disrespect for, for the community. If this is an issue that's affecting hundreds of tenants and they're not being consistent and they're not, sharing that information widely and being transparent, that's really, really troubling. And I think it's also worth us noting that Gotham is continuing to develop in this area with the development and Covenant House and being involved in that, in things that are related to nonprofits and to affordable housing. And at the same time is nickel and diming the affordable housing tenants in buildings that they already own. And so that's really troubling, and I think is worth, just stating for the record.
Elise, could you tell us in which building they revoked and reinstated
In Gotham West, some of the tenants had their credits reinstated as Gotham was, I guess, deliberate as the complaints were being deliberated on. So
was that across the board or just certain tenants?
I believe it was certain tenants. It was not across the board.
And then where did they revoke at the same time?
So they were reinstating, I believe, and I know Gotham West tenants could speak to this better than I could, but you have folks in the Nicole and in the Atlas discovering that their credits have been revoked in March of 2020, and the complaints and the organizing in Gotham West is starting in the fall of 2019. So
the reinstatement, though, what's the time frame for that in Gotham West?
I believe it's pre-COVID.
So like maybe January, February, approximate?
Yeah.
And then even after January, February, there was now revoking the credits in the Nicole and the Atlas subsequent. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Elise. Who's our next speaker?
Our next speaker is someone who's called in with the 646 number. Hello, caller.
Hi. This is Patricia Tarkington from Gotham West. I'm the one who called in.
Perfect. Go right ahead.
Okay. I live in Gotham West. I'm a tier 2 low-income tenant. There are many complaints about this matter before the DHCR and the Office of Attorney General, State of New York, and it is far from settled. We have located a DHCR decision from 2017 in which the agency took on the subject of the calculation of low-income tenants' rents at Gotham West and concluded with certainty that the utility allowance was properly deducted from the preferential rent pursuant to the regulatory agreement. Now, we have recently reminded DHCR of that 2017 decision, and whether it sways the agency only time will tell, but we're confident that it will sway whoever must ultimately decide this case. Gotham's claim that the utility allowance was always communicated as temporary is simply a lie. They have pointed to no specific words anywhere in the lease or the rider which convey that the utility allowance was meant to be temporary. Gotham is a professional property management company, as is Rose Associates, and both companies know how to write a temporary rent concession. The word temporary appears nowhere on the lease, nowhere in the riders. There is no expiration date cited, and no suggestion whatsoever that this utility allowance is temporary. The low-income tenants at Gotham West have permanent riders that were meant to be administered with a variable rate in accordance with annual HUD declarations. That is how it was explained. That is how it was administered for 6 years, including 4 years after Gotham terminated Rose Associates as its property manager and began administering these leases. Low-income tenants at Gotham West get the lower of either the LIHTC calculated rent or the rent stabilized rent. Gotham keeps gassing on and on about LIHTC calculations when that has nothing to do with the instant matter, because we're not being charged LIHTC rents. We're being charged rent stabilized rents under the rent stabilized lease that has a permanent rider fixed to it that calls for a utility allowance to be deducted from preferential rent. We are not talking about an LIHTC rent, and the only reason that Gotham is gassing on and on about it is to try to confuse the matter. The utility allowance that Gotham West low-income tenants are receiving is not duplicative because the tenants haven't been receiving any other utility allowance at all. Gotham blames Rose Associates for a systemic error spanning nearly 20 years at the Atlas, the Nicole, and now Gotham West that cost them millions of dollars, and yet Gotham is not suing Rose for all the utility allowances it claims were improperly credited. Gotham's desire to avoid a confrontation with Rose can only mean one thing, that they believe that they would lose, and thus lose any and all opportunity to ever take away the utility allowances from tenants. But by bypassing Rose and simply going directly after the tenants' utility allowances, they think they can score a half win, which is better than no win at all. There is no way that Rose Associates is not going to be drawn into this dispute if we continue on the current course. Rose Associates will be summoned to be responsive to Gotham's claim that Rose fouled up on the utility allowances for nearly 2 decades while Gotham snoozed away. Thank you very much for your time.
Patricia, you referred to this 2017 decision. Can you provide a copy of that to the community board?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. And then you talk about 20 years. You're dealing with Nicole going back to 2004. That's the earliest, right?
And the Atlas, I think the Atlas was 2001 or so.
Okay.
So don't, make sure. Yeah.
Right. Anything else that you can do to help us gather information? We'd really appreciate it.
Well, yeah. Well, we've been at this for a year, Joe, and
I know.
We've been reaching out to everybody, and there is a lot of correspondence, and Gotham has offered a lot of explanations that has changed over the years. And I will tell you that they have just destroyed whatever goodwill they had in this building, especially during the initial COVID outbreak in April and May, when 2 of my dear friends in this building who were also low-income tenants were struggling with their last breaths while Gotham was trying to rip the utility allowances out of their leases. I mean, it is just despicable the way they have behaved.
Well, I think we're very clear that the timing of all this is ridiculous and the communication is piss poor. We noted that this morning for them. Is there anything, you made one more note, you said that the low-income housing tax credit rents don't apply. Could you talk about that a little bit more?
Right. As I'm referring to the Tier 1, Tier 2 tenants in Gotham West who are have their leases through under an HFA agreement and LIHTC. They calculate the LIHTC rent, which is 30% of 50% of the area media income. Yes. Okay. So that's what the LIHTC is. Now, if that increase during the year is greater than what the rent guidelines board increase is, then we get the rent guidelines board increase. And we have always gotten that because that has always been less than the LIHTC calculated rent. So the LIHTC calculated rent has a utility allowance that's deducted from the maximum rent. And the rent stabilized
and that was a starting rent, actually, right? That's your starting.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. And then the rent stabilized lease has a utility allowance that also has a rider that also has a utility allowance that runs parallel. And it has always been administered the same way using the HUD annual utility allowance credits. And this is the way it was done. Yes, and this is the way it was done in Gotham West. And this is the way Rose Associates handled the LIHTC tenants in their Durst building, the Helena. So this has been, and that goes back to like almost 2000. So this has been Rose's business practice for 20 years at least.
Really, thank you for a lot of that information. So if you can get that to Nellie, that decision, that'd be very helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Next person, Nellie.
I have no other hands raised.
Okay, then let's go back to the committee and just talk about this a little bit. As you can see, this is an item that has a lot of information needed, and that's why we felt a little bit concerned about not putting it all together. But let's do thoughts about this and how we want to proceed on it. Let's start out with JD.
It is confusing. Joe, the last speaker was a tenant in Gotham West. I think we need, first of all, we need some answers to some of those questions that we asked. When did it start? A lot of information we got tonight. I think you should get that, and Maria, and then we can proceed with that.
Yeah, I think part of it is we need to gather as much information as possible in order to come back to the committee in December to say, here's what we found so far, because I don't even know how to proceed make a recommendation until we have information.
Yes, and Joe, I want to keep emphasizing, it concerns me that some tenants who were acting in good faith all along may face a lot of hardship with this, and I think we need to keep that in mind.
I think one of our goals tonight is maybe just to formally ask Gotham to keep the status quo right now until we can go through this. So
Yeah.
no, Katie?
Thanks, Joe.
I'm worried. I think we need to be really clear about when we say that we want Gotham to keep the status quo. It sounds like they've already removed it from some people. So we don't want that status quo.
Well, I meant status quo of maintaining the credit.
Yes. But I guess for those people who lost the credit in January, I'm not quite sure what I mean, maybe we just have to keep that status quo too until we can unscramble this all.
I think that there's a lot of different dates we don't even know yet. This may have been different dates for different people. The last speaker, Patricia, said it was back in 2019. So that's the problem. We don't even have we don't even know. That's our problem.
Yeah. But I guess the other thought that I just had is that I'm not sure how tonight's speakers heard about us having this discussion, but I think it's clear, it's really
It's on our
important.
agenda.
No, I mean, I know, right. If they happen to live there and happen to see our agenda, that's great. But I guess what I mean is, I think I wonder what we can do, whether we post a bunch of signs.
We normally post people inquire. This is on our agenda because people from these buildings asked for it to be put on our agenda.
Right. I guess my only thought is, clearly this is something that's important to a lot of people in those buildings. And as opposed to just people who happen to be savvy enough to know about us, I'm just wondering, like, can we also post some extra signs to say, like, hey, this is being looked at by Community Board 4 and we really want to hear from you?
I think we should have Nellie do posting. Well, how are we doing posting now, Nellie, anyway? I don't know.
I mean, our letter to the entire community is posting that we're talking about this. This is how we communicate.
No, but I meant for the meeting notice. How are we doing posting now with COVID? I don't even know.
It's posted in the same way, an email blast. We have over 3,000 people on our listserv.
Okay.
Okay, this is clearly something that I think there would be a lot of people who I'm not sure if they all know about it. And I'm sure we'd like to hear from more tenants.
Jessica?
Just, on that point, because I agree, I think unless you're tapped into the community board, you don't know about the community board. Is there a tenants association that we're working with or organizing body? I mean, this is as you noted, this is impacting so many people, and you've already rolled up your sleeves. We, collectively, the committee will roll up their sleeves to deal with this, but like, this really is a huge issue impacting people living on site. It would just seem a tenants association having a contact to represent the tenants, as I've heard us do in other cases where there are issues that are pervasive in a building, would seem appropriate.
Maria, is there a tenant association in your building?
For all of them. A loosely formed one, not really, I would say no. But Elise spoke, she's from HCC. So she's been HCC has been dealing with the issue.
I'm just a little concerned about us doing the work of literally trying to find every single tenant. The work that we're doing when we write a letter, when we make a recommendation, will impact all of those tenants. The information that we're going to uncover are going to come from official sources, going to come from getting those copies of those leases. I think that it actually lengthens our process of being effective if we're literally knocking on every single door and saying, did you have this problem? Did you see this issue?
I think Katie's more aware of our meetings, right? Yeah. I mean, that's something we can ask HCC to post our notice around the locations of these buildings, Nellie. How about if we do that?
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Because HCC is working with them. So and understand, everyone's right, the numbers, it's 787 households involved in this. So we really have to think. And also, I want to say for everybody, expectations, we're not going to be able to solve this or figure this out in a day. This is going to be compiling, trying to figure out meetings, expectations are not, these are regulatory agreements that have to be read, like carefully and stuff. So let's keep going around the committee. Josephine, thoughts? James?
Yes, I guess it's kind of a combination of a couple of the concerns that have been expressed, but the first thing for me is I'm a little confused. This seems very cryptic, very, because it's regulatory and because there are private agreements involved, like it seems pretty involved. And to be honest,
all these agreements are public though, James. So
all I meant was they're individual agreements between one party and an organization. That's all I meant. But the point is that, for each of these agreements, again, we would have to figure out who are all the parties involved. And it seems that the implication is that this problem could extend to other properties that we haven't even discovered yet. So I guess my question is, what is the end game and what is our desired outcome? And what role can we play as the community board? Because we have limited resources and limited time, and we want to do good for the community. But at the same time, we're not like a legislative body. We don't have investigative resources.
We are a legislative body.
Well, we don't have the power to. We don't have the power to. We don't have the power to put anything into effect that is legal. We are an advisory body, and we all know that. So I'm just saying, what is the end game here? What is the desired outcome? How can we, help?
We as a community board don't have enough information to figure out what an end game is. We have to first assemble information to understand what is this about? You know what I mean? In other words, we have to.
No, I'm sorry. I don't accept that answer. We don't just do things without knowing where it's leading. So what I'm saying is, let's assume for a moment that there are violations taking place. I'm just asking, what is it? What are the possibilities that we could do? How do we effectuate a positive change? That's what I'm asking.
So we first have to find out whether or not utility credit allowance should or should not have been applied, period. That's just determine that.
And then what? I understand that. You're talking to me about process again. I just want to know, then what? That's all I'm asking.
Joe,
go ahead, JD.
I think part of the process and part of the agreement with Gotham is that they would work with the community board to come to a resolution that is as satisfying as we can make it. So I think we can be a partner in finding a solution with Gotham for the tenants.
Right, but again, James, it's hard to come up with a solution until we know the facts.
So Joe, I agree with James in a sense that we don't have all the facts on why the error happened and how many people have been affected when. We know that.
I'm not even on the error. I'm just talking about what
we
those
do
agreements
know
say should happen.
Right. What we do know is there's a community response. And I think we can speak to being extremely alarmed that this is happening, highlight again the lack of communication and the real impact that lack of communication is having upon the entire community. Those are things that I think that we can address right now because we have people who sound very distressed, and rightfully so. And I think that's something that we can address in the immediate, so that one, we're letting the rest of the community know that we hear that, we are responding to that while we're still getting as many facts as possible so that it can be worked out to the right resolution.
Let me rephrase my question, because I honestly, and Dolores, I do appreciate that because, and Joe, I appreciate what you're saying about the process. I respect all of that. That all makes sense to me. What I'm asking is, without committing to an outcome, because I'm not saying that this is what's going to happen. I'm just saying, what are some of the things that could possibly happen depending on the facts that we discover? For example, are these people in their minds owed money? So is one possibility that there's a class action lawsuit and they try to get their money back? Or wait, before you, I just want to walk through some possibilities and then you can tell me they're all stupid. But I'm just trying to give you examples of what my question actually is
I
asking.
would prefer, though, you don't give concrete examples that create expectations.
I'm not creating any expectations. I'm just trying to explain my question. I haven't even gotten my question out. My question is, are these people, do they think they're owed money? Or are they saying, we want these things corrected going forward? Or is it after a factual determination that, no, there was no error made? Like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, what are we trying to do here? And what can we do? Like, is this something where they can get relief from HPD or NYCHA? Or do they have to go to the courts? Like, I'm just saying, like, what are the outcomes? That's all I'm asking.
So I think the issue is there are so many agencies involved, we don't even know the correct route. In these buildings, New York City Housing Development Corporation had the financing and regulatory agreements. HPD has a part, and New York State HFA has a part, and it's different for different buildings. Once we get that, either they're in compliance with their agreements or they're not. That's going to be a pretty simple thing, either or. But then the next question is, let's say for a moment they're in compliance and there was an error, even though we have no information about that. It doesn't mean that that we can't ask them to fix it in a way that does not hurt people, because this is not a small thing to happen to a lot of people, especially in this moment, whether you're low, moderate, middle income, and that's a broad range of bands involved here, that everyone's hurting. So that's a big issue, how it's handled. Dolores, is that a good way to phrase it, you think?
Yes, but again, I think that it is important that we express the reaction. And I think that's
at this juncture.
Right, I think that's something we can do now.
Yeah.
Memorialize what we're hearing from the community, and also the concerns that we have about whatever the potential outcomes are, highlighting of how that may impact.
Thank you both.
Our team members.
That's very helpful.
Katie?
As James said, it's sort of a thicket, and it's complex. And I'm just wondering, you had said, like, what are some possible next steps, or what are some suggestions? And I just wonder, like, should we have a little subcommittee? Should a couple of people like volunteer and say, we'd be happy to, once the information is, sent in.
I'm smiling. I was going to recommend we have a subcommittee to read the documents just to spread this work out a bit, because this is
exactly
a lot of documents to look at.
Yeah. So anyway.
So you are definitely volunteering, yes?
Wait, I see what you did there, Joe. But yes, I would be happy to.
Okay. Paul, thoughts? You're on mute. You're on mute, Paul.
Yeah, my first thought was that we need subpoena power, but no, seriously, this is exactly that. It's a thicket, and maybe it'll be simpler than we think. Once this committee, to be chaired by Katie, sits, we should be able to thread our way through the documents. God, it sounds like it's awfully complicated, but it also sounds like it's just complicated enough so that if any developer wanted to, they might take advantage of individual folks as opposed to airing it out in a public forum or with our assistance. And I guess that's what we're here for. So yeah, it's a thicket.
Pete?
This low-income housing credit seems to be a little confusing, and I think we need to have some more information on that, background on this. I tend to believe that many of the tenants are so confused, they're not, and that's why they're not participating now. So I think we still need to reach out to those tenants, inform them, educate them in regards to this agreement or allowance. And I think we can give a better response. And I think we need to be more informed about the agreement itself.
Leslie?
I think we need to work with HCC because they've worked on this for at least a year and they do good work. And I'm sure they have a lot of history on this project. And I think that's important. And going forward, we also need to be concerned about Gotham in the community in other buildings and how this may impact other buildings.
Well, so far they have 3, so that's why we're focusing on those.
Yeah, but I mean, for future, if they come up with others, we need to also monitor what's going on with those.
And then Judith, you're the last speaker, I think. Judith is frozen. No, almost frozen. Yeah, there
I
you
don't,
are.
I don't have any comment. Thank you. I think it's all been said. So good luck.
Okay. Betty?
Are we intending to have a letter from the committee today? I mean,
Yes. I think
I like the, okay, that was a yes. I think that I like Dolores's approach that we have a lot of troubled people over a troubling issue, and the community board is going to form a subcommittee or something and look into. I do feel it's a little daunting and to unscramble it all. So I am not volunteering for that subcommittee, but I think you need to have a couple of people who have the time to look at these documents and ask people who know more about these documents. So it's not something that's going to be resolved quickly, I don't think. But I like the idea of the letter.
I want to echo what Leslie had said, that HCC's been working on this and they have lawyers and they actually understand these complications, and we may not need to duplicate that work. We may need to just tap into what they already have and documented, and then figure out if there are any holes based on some of the testimony we've received from the tenants tonight and any other tenants that reach out.
But we have requested from Gotham all the proper regulatory agreements. We need to make sure we have them so everything is current and up to date. So, you know, we're all on the same page. But I think having HCC assist us is a major help here.
Well, I make a motion for us to write such a letter as Betty has outlined that describes this as troubling issue that is troubling our neighbors, and that we need to go ahead and get more facts to understand how to come to a resolution. But we need to, at least in this letter, outline our concern at the lack of communication and the impact that it's had on our community members.
Second. Jessica, you got a thought? Second.
Sorry, I guess I was just hearing though that maybe I agree with that letter. I like that, but I think I was hearing though that like we should be supporting HCC, like they should. That's what I felt like I was hearing. No, Dolores, that's not what you're saying.
What I meant was they've been doing this work already for a year with people who have reached out to them. So they may already have documentation. They may already have some resources explaining the legal thicket. Great word, Katie. Thicket that has been created in this process. All I'm saying is that not to assist them, but we shouldn't necessarily recreate the entire wheel. If someone has already done this work, we may be able to adopt some of the information from them. That was my thought.
Okay.
I just want to say we also need to keep an open mind and consider that in the future we will be working with Gotham to get a solution. So we need to be careful here.
Right. We're not litigants. We're problem solvers here. So
right.
That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question about the letter?
Yeah.
I'm not clear. To whom would it be addressed?
Oh, to Gotham. We're saying you've handled this terribly, bad communication, many people affected. Here are the buildings. Here's what it is. And we look forward to working with you. Please keep the status quo, and we'll define that properly. And we figure out how to deal with this. I mean, listen, it's going to be, yes, it's correct, or it's not correct, period. And then even if there's an error, it doesn't mean that you just say, turn on a faucet, everybody pays more. That's not the way to do business at all. So
we would also want to copy the appropriate people that need
That's what I was wondering about, like who's going to be copied and to
yeah.
Well, so far we know it's 2 city agencies and 1 state agency. So all those in favor of that letter, please raise your hand. All those opposed? All those present not eligible? Maria? Okay, it passes. Let me turn
Joe, one more thing. Emily Bordasek from
I'm sorry.
Linda Rosenthal's office had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nellie, bring her in. Apologize.
Emily?
Hi. This is Emily from Assemblymember Rosenthal's office. I was trying to let the tenants speak first, and then I didn't hit the button in time before committee discussion. I just wanted to share an update what our office has been working on this. I know we had a tenant meeting earlier in January, February, and we submitted several lease overcharge applications to DHCR. We started to receive back some rejections. And there was a lot of confusion because DHCR said the reason they were rejected was because it needed to be submitted to the HFA, which is a division of DHCR. And so we were talking to the rent administrator's office, and even they were confused about why there might have been a denial. So we're just continuing to work with them while they kind of internally figure out what happened there. And we also are meeting with Gotham tomorrow. They asked to meet with us to give a briefing similar to what I'm sure they gave the board today. So it was great to hear from the tenants, and thank you all so much.
What Emily's referring to is a process called a PAR, Petition for Administrative Review, where you can claim an overcharge or other service reduction. And there is this definite issue that it's a jurisdiction. HFA is not actually part of HCR, but it's a separate agency supervised by HCR. So that's why another example of the multiple levels of things here that we got to really sort out. Thank you all very much for listening to this complicated thing, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be hearing about it for the months to come. Marie, I'll turn over the committee to you now for the next item for West 24th Street.
The other thing, I just wanted to shout out Maya Berlow from Brad Hoyleman's office is on. Also, I saw Carl Wilson from the Speaker, Court Speaker Johnson's office. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with any of the other names. The next item.
So you want to take the first item? The 219-223.
So I don't, we're supposed to have someone here speaking about it. I believe her name is, I might be mixing up the buildings. Jacqueline?
No. That's the next one.
Wait, let me just look on the agenda. I'm sorry. So the next item on the agenda is 219-223 West 24th Street.
I guess Maria, I could take over that and tell the committee about what's going on.
Yes, please, Judith. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so many of you know that I live on 24th Street, and in, I think it was May 8th, an article came out in the Daily News that documented what was happening on the building right next to the High School of Fashion and right before Whole Food, that the tenants were being evicted because the landlord did not repair the building and the rent stabilized tenants were evicted. As a regular person who walks down the street and sees all this going on, I couldn't help but find out what's going on with the tenants, and they were just sent to live somewhere else. Then the whole place was boarded up, and it was just a big disaster, filthy, dirty. So we had them put a board up in front of it. And then recently, which is why I brought it to the committee, because I don't know what to do about this sort of thing, there was a work order, stop work order on the building. And I walked by it just the other day and there were people working on it. So I called Jesse and I put in a call through 311. And I think there's some rules and regulations that they're allowed to go back and work on the building, but we don't know what they're doing. And we don't know if they're putting the rent stabilized tenants back. And I just don't know how to find out that information. And I think it's 48 units of rent stabilized building. And when our city is struggling so much for affordable housing, this is 3 buildings that are just disappearing. And the articles in the Daily News and in the real estate, Googling it, says that the person who bought it was taken to a lawsuit. I know Dick Godfrey's Matt Till, he told me that they sued them and they're supposed to be repairing the buildings. I don't know why a stop work order would go up. I don't know why all of a sudden it's allowed. I don't really know what to do about this, but it's a really big concern. As we talked about from the last tenant, is like the community should know what's going on. And this is a really important thing. We have some members of the Block Association who are texting me, who are on the call. And we just need to know where people can live that are affordable in our building, in our block on 24th Street. It's a big concern. And I just don't know what the first steps are that as a community board we need to do.
So the community board has been involved in this. If you remember back a couple of years back, the new owner bought the building. They created a situation where the building was declared structurally unsound by the Department of Buildings, leading to a vacate. The tenants had to be relocated out, not evicted, because of that vacate. And then the city of New York, at the council members' urging, went to HPD and court, and the owner was forced to actually repair the building, but he didn't do anything for quite some time. Those repairs started just recently. This is the report I got from Jesse. There was a stop work order. However, Jesse, our district manager, reported that in fact, the work that is being performed is consistent with the order that the agencies ordered them to do to repair the building. So it doesn't mean that they're going to comply or do it in the proper fashion or deal with it properly, but that's where we are, as opposed to saying this is an affordable housing building. This is a rent stabilized building that was affordable that somebody bought in order to vacate and get rid of people. And they were stopped from doing that. But as usual, this is like the Chelsea Hotel. You know, there's a litigation back and forth in agencies. So I'm going to ask, can we bring Carl Wilson in? Maybe he knows a little more about this to give us a report from Corey Johnson's office. Is he there, Nellie?
I'm sorry, repeat that again, Joe?
Can you bring Carl Wilson in?
Yes, of course.
I'm sorry, I'm having a difficult time with my voice today.
Carl?
Yes, I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so Joe, that's accurate. Your summary of what happened. There was, a joint lawsuit between DOB and HPD where they were ordered to make repairs to the building, and they were supposed to have that completed that by November 6th. So it appeared that those permits had not been filed, and the city's law department is watching this very, very closely. I mean, Joe, I think you summed it up pretty well. I mean, we have a lot of great interest in this, being followed through on. Judith, you're right. To lose this number of affordable units it would be very problematic, and that was our concern from the outset. So we were very happy with the ruling, and intend to continue to work with DOB and HPD to make sure that they are carefully watching what the owner is doing here.
So really, Housing Court gave an order at the urging of HPD and DOB, and now it's being carried out. But as we know, Judith, you must be vigilant because owners do things to make sure that buildings go away. We've had that all over the place. So please keep Jesse in the loop of information so we know what's happening at this location.
Yeah, and it was very clear that that these owners wanted to demo. They wanted to knock the building down, and that is unacceptable to us. And thankfully the courts agreed to that. And so, but we're following this very closely, Judith, and we have a lot of interest in seeing this restored as well.
Thank you, Carl. Let's move on to, and thank you very much, Judith, for bringing it to the committee too. Let's move on to our next item, which is 253 West 34th Street. The Jeanne, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I brought that one up also. I would like to give a little background on that one.
Yes, please.
So a lovely lady was teaching at my school, and she's teaching math. She's a graduate of Cornell, and we got to be friendly. And then I found out recently that Jackie, who's on the call, said that her building was being sold, and she had really reached out to the powers that be in community to try and get some action. This is, I don't know the rules and regulations again, and Joe, I hope that we can follow your leadership in this, but it's a historic building from 1898, and it's a nonprofit women's residence. And I, of course, Googling and looking around, many residents that are, it was started for the French girls in the historical times, so they would have a place to live. It's Jeanne d'Arc. And Jackie will tell us a little bit about it, but I just can't believe it. On 24th Street, 4 buildings of affordable buildings in Chelsea are just being raised and sold, and it's just a really big concern. And I'm glad to bring it to the community so we can all pay attention to this. I don't know. I spoke to Eric Botcher about this, and it's just crazy that that residence that has gotten tax breaks, tax benefits as a religious organization for all these years would be able to give back to the community and continue this building as affordable housing for women. I don't know exactly how many women fit in there, but it's a single room and a double room, and then they have like a dormitory space. And it's been there since 1898. And it's like it's run by the sisters, and Jackie will tell us about it. Can we bring her in? I mean, should we bring her in now, Joe?
Yes,
or
please.
Nellie, is she
Her name is,
available to
you have
chat?
it, Jacqueline Fishback, you have it? Perfect.
Hello. Yes, so on August 10th, we received the news that we received a letter from the kind of like the directors, who is it's a group of nuns in Kentucky who can make decisions on the building, that Jeanne d'Arc would be closing, and the building has been a form of short-term single occupancy residence for women, either starting out in New York or students, or it's supposed to be for 5 years. And we have leases that are ending December 31st, and those won't be renewed. And then afterwards, it will be month-to-month tenancy until June 30th, 2021, when we must leave the building. I looked into it with a tenants' rights lawyer, and we don't, because the building is owned by like a religious nonprofit, and it's a single room occupancy room, we don't have the rights that would otherwise protect people, other tenants in rent stabilized apartments. So there really isn't, I'm really stuck as to what to do other than reaching out and seeing if there are other nonprofits who could hopefully acquire the building and keep up the mission to have it for affordable housing in the community, as it would just be a shame for it to close and become, a condominium and be sold at market value.
Could you tell us how many apartments or rooms in the building?
Yes, there are 140 rooms.
And when it is specifically in the lease that it is short-term occupancy?
Yes, up to 5 years.
And has the building been managed directly by the nuns, or is it very much arm's length?
It's sort of arm's length. So there's, from what I understand, I didn't even know who the landlord was until I had to like investigate it. There's an administrator who manages the building and any issues that that residents might have with each other, or in terms of housekeeping and maintenance. And there's a board of, I believe, 5 nuns and this administrator who can make decisions on the building. And so the landlord is technically the Congregation of Divine Providence, and they are in Melbourne, Kentucky.
And they have never indicated before they were selling the building? This just came out of the blue?
I think they made, there were signs that it would happen to people who were in the building before me, that they made an update on the lease. The nuns who are the landlords of the building are becoming older, and there isn't a younger population to replace them. And they didn't want to hand it down to a non-religious administration. So,
But they wanted to sell it. Isn't that non-religious?
yeah, but I mean, it's no longer under their it's no longer going to be considered their mission once it's no longer Jeanne d'Arc, essentially.
Got it. Katie?
Sorry, I'm just a little confused. So has the building been sold? Because
No,
I know-
they have let the tenants know they're selling the building, and and their leases will end as of, they're not going to be renewed after December 31st. It'll
Okay.
be on month to month through June of next year.
So Jacqueline, because I know you had said that your hope is that maybe a buyer could be found who might continue this approach for, women's residents. But to confirm, so as far as you know, it is still on the market.
As far as I know, yeah, they actually didn't even come out and say that they were selling the building in the letter. They just said that that they're going to bring the ministry of Jeanne d'Arc to completion.
This is a simple phrase. We've had this in 2 cases before. We've had religious residences or women's residences, Leo House and then Central Maria on 54th Street, Leo House on 23rd, where the group of nuns became elderly and they just basically were dissipating. And people were evicted. I'm going to be honest with you. It was horrific. We watched a lot of people be evicted. So it's not an uncommon thing. And because there's a specific way that these things are set up under the law, tenants do not have a lot of rights. Jessica?
Yeah.
It appears that this residence is affiliated with Catholic Charities of New York, and I'm wondering, the church obviously is a very big organization, but it's also a very significant player in the health and human services arena, providing core services throughout the city. I wonder if there might be an opportunity to connect with them and try to get a better understanding. It lists them actually as an agency, and so they may have a better sense of what the intention or the opportunity around this is.
I want to go to Carl because I believe, Carl, you're on the call this morning. Neither Maria or I could attend. That was the discussion about this. Is that correct?
Yes. So this morning we had a call with we gathered our elected colleagues and Larry Wood from Goddard, who has I think some of you may know him on the call here, who has extensive experience with SRO and tenant organizing. And as Jacqueline said, these units do not appear to be under the same sort of rent protections that you or I might have. But he said that there might be it's possible that they may have received what's called a J51 tax credit, which could apply some protections to the ladies living there. But we have to do a little bit more research to find out if that is the case. Because they are allowed to stay till June, given the way the court system is right now too, I think that it's, holdover proceedings wouldn't be able to proceed at least until June, probably not later, given the COVID scenario that we're in. So I think in this, our goal here is to try to alert the affordable housing network to try to find some kind of buyer to take this over. I think that's the most ideal situation that we would like to see happen. But if not, to try to buy the women as much time as possible to relocate. So we're all working together and intend to pursue that avenue with them. We've tried to reach out to the nuns. We haven't had a lot of success yet, but we're going to continue to try.
Carl, I have 2 quick questions for clarity.
Yes,
I think Carl can answer because it would be from the call this morning. Just to be clear, it's not all women any longer. I mean, Jacqueline could answer that as well.
It still is.
Oh, it is. Okay. And then I was unclear about whether or not they are connected to Catholic Charities, as Jessica said.
I'm not sure. Jessica, did you say that they were affiliated with them?
I mean, I'm not familiar with the organization, but I did just Google it, and it comes listed as one of their agencies for Catholic.
So Jessica, we had this circumstance before. Leo House was affiliated with Catholic Charities, but they have this independent board of governors. So
Oh,
even though we
sure.
can use the political pressure on Catholic Charities, it's in the end, it's gonna be the nuns in Kentucky that
100%.
decide what happens here.
Yep, and I worked for basically the Jewish Catholic Charities, so I'm familiar with like the affiliated organizations and
Yep.
how they're independent and all of that. But if an organization that you claim to be affiliated with is no longer going to be listed as part of your core partners, as a leadership, like an organization like Catholic Charities may want to know about that and have a say, be informed, have the inside track. And so I was just thinking it may be another way. For example, they may be able to get the nuns on the phone if they're not answering, the electeds calls.
Got it. So I think what are people's thoughts about this? Yeah, Dolores, sorry.
So not the same type of organization, but the same situation with Hartley House. And I think now that we have been alerted, we can all go into action mode, which is just bringing everyone together and alerting. And once someone can actually get this board of directors in conversation, I think that there are a lot of potential solutions that collectively we can offer. Because clearly, as we found it with Hartley House, without consulting with the community, but consulting with perhaps financial advisors or other folks, made a decision that makes the most sense. But these are people that are far away and removed from our community and do not understand the impact. I think that even if they say that their mission here in New York is done, they are mission-oriented people, and hearing from tenants like Jacqueline and how important this type of housing is for newer folks coming into New York that are doing important work like being teachers and still being able to afford to live here, may be enough an appeal to give us some time. I think that I don't know what avenues to go to connect with them, except for sending JD back down to Kentucky and having him find them.
I'll talk to those nuns. I'll go talk to them.
Okay.
Yeah,
You know where Melbourne is?
Yeah. It's right over the hill over there.
But either way, I do think that we have a blueprint with having found solutions by working collectively and bringing everyone together, like with Hartley House, to at least present to them once we can get them to the table to say, hey, this is not your only option. There's a community here that's counting on still being able to have this type of housing. And I don't know, JD, find them.
So I would say we should not probably write a letter this week, this month, but see if through Corey's office, we can convene folks. Carl specifically, I think this is the kind of project that works very well for breaking ground. It's a scale that they're used to. And the city, we know the city still has money in its budget for supportive housing. So maybe this is the kind of thing that works for supportive housing at this location.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We're very interested in exploring that. And I just want to say, The Nuns of Kentucky sounds like JD's new play. Is that right?
Yes.
That'd be amazing.
You have your Mother Superior costume handy, I hope.
I do.
Let's just hope it's not that case, because our last two religious orders were not easy to work with. Okay.
Betty has her hand up.
Yes, Betty. Betty, you're on mute.
Betty,
you're on mute.
I was actually just scratching, but I immediately thought of Hartley House when this was coming up, and how it was almost a miracle turned around. And I guess I wanted to ask Carl or the other speaker or somebody else, or maybe Judith knows, is this building in good shape? It's in good shape? Okay, because I think that could make it a little easier that it's not falling down.
Betty, it's a beautiful shape. You should take a walk. It really is it's attractive. They've done renovations over the years. They've, donated furniture to the school. They've really taken very good care of the building. And I know the porter very well. So Jack, I don't know if Jackie, do you think that the building's in good shape? Did Jackie leave? Where did she go? There she is.
Anyway, I live near there, so I will take a walk to both of these sites. I haven't been aware of them, but I just would really like it if this could turn around to be some kind of a nonprofit affordable housing situation. I think it would
Jackie,
warm all our hearts.
Is the building overall good condition?
It's in good condition. It's an older building. It's in need of renovations on the inside, I'd say, for it to be more comfortable. It's not a very comfortable place to live, to be honest.
It probably requires major mechanical stuff, Judith, and updating to meet today's codes. I'm pretty sure the building being built when it is, even though it was renovated, probably doesn't meet today's codes. So it doesn't make any difference. Let's give it a go. Carl, can we ask your office to spearhead this?
Yes.
Okay.
Joe?
JD, yes.
I'm more concerned about the tenants who are there. What happens to them now, and what would happen to them if it did become an affordable housing site? So I'm concerned about those.
Well, we have the examples of the Y and Times Square Hotel. Anybody who was there is grandfathered in, and they are part of the project that happens. And that's the only way the board's ever sponsored these kind of things or help these things happen.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for asking, JD, because a lot of residents are moving out and they had anticipated being able to stay for their remaining years that they had left. And yeah, if we leave, then we might not be able to see how this goes through. And then if it does work out, maybe we can stay.
Well, do they know about how to access affordable housing in the city? How to go about that? If not, they might put them in touch with the community board, or Maria or Joe, to advise them. Certainly Jesse can help them out. There's a lot of affordable housing around that they can apply for. So all the resources we can help with might be useful.
Right. Thank you.
Josephine?
I just wanted to clarify. I wasn't sure if Carl had said that he was interested in this as supportive housing or affordable housing. I just wanted to clarify. You are talking about turning these possibly into affordable housing. The supportive housing to me means something different.
Supportive housing is a type of affordable housing, and this is an SRO, so therefore it lends itself toward that supportive housing model. Smaller spaces that there are no programs to finance SRO renovation without it being supportive housing. So that's how the city's set up right now.
I guess to me, so then grandfathering the people who are already there, the current tenants, into this supportive housing model, isn't that, I mean, we're talking about two different populations, correct?
No, every supportive housing building in the city is 60% social service needy tenants and 40% community tenants who are low income.
Okay.
They're never done 100% social service needy. Judith?
I just had one more comment because I don't know. I just found out recently that there is a breaking ground in the old YMCA that's there on 24th Street, which is right across the street from Whole Foods. I don't know.
Been there for many years, yes.
Yeah, so some people might not have known about that. So I guess two supportive housings on 24th Street, that seems like a lot, but affordable housing would be useful.
Well, if you didn't know about it, Judith, and they're doing a really good job.
Right.
Well, they are hanging out front and there is a little bit of problems, but I did have to go in and investigate like what was going on there. We had a tour with the Block Association with Omar Patel. And when we created the Block Association, that gave us the right to go in and find out what was going on in the neighborhood, because before that, they wouldn't let us in the door. Thank you.
So let's go. Paul, yes?
Quick question. I'd like to, if there's any point to it, I'm sort of curious, Joe, as to what our experience has been over the longer period of time with religious housing like this. But the other question, my real question is, are there any actors involved, like those helpful folks who were advising Hartley House because they specialized in their concern for not-for-profits and religious? Remember those folks who that was their little niche, and they advised them, what a surprise, sell, get a lot of money. I'm just wondering if there's anyone in this transaction so far.
I have to say, the miracle workers are in short supply, and there's just so many to go around.
I know, they're
So-
so helpful.
I know, but the scale of
But-
this at 140 rooms
Yeah.
really seems to be more suitable toward the breaking ground model,
Yeah.
where they know how to scale these things. Like the McBurney Y, that was a historic tax credit project, low-income
Sure.
housing tax credits, a major restoration. The same thing with the Times Square Hotel with the Prince George.
Mm.
That it occurred to me when I looked at this carefully. That seems to be the model that has worked in other difficult structures like this.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's a huge problem for orders that are just naturally evaporating.
they're dying.
I'm just wondering, do we have a playbook about cases where that has happened, and with or without the help in parentheses of outside actors? That's my
Yes, we have 3 locations in our district where that has happened. One was a good result, Good Shepherd on 22nd Street. Leo House became a hotel for Catholic tourists, and Central Maria is being vacated as we speak.
Yeah,
So-
no. If I was running the church, I'd say, we could use some good PR. This sounds like an opportunity.
I
Thanks.
think they want to use money to pay off claims, Paul. So I think we have this. Carl, can I ask you to report back to us in the December meeting about any
No, somebody has
discussions?
their hand raised in the.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who has a hand raised?
It's Brian Matlin.
Oh, go ahead, Maria. Nellie, bring him in. I apologize. I'm not
Oh, I'm
watching.
sorry, I didn't see the name. Hold on.
It's Brian Matlin.
There you go.
Brian?
Yes, am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Fantastic. Hi, everybody. So I just want to bring in a little bit of an external context to this. And I have to admit, my information is not up to date to the day, but as of maybe a year or 2 ago, the large corner lot immediately to the west of this building, which is the 1-story Rite Aid store, was, or I believe still is, owned by the real estate developer John Katzmatidis, who not that long ago also purchased the Midtown Lumber Building on the 200 block of West 25th Street, which is where I live, which is a 1-story building that goes all the way through from 25th Street back to the property line with the Rite Aid building. The presumption being that he bought that lot to perhaps transfer air rights to the corner lot on 8th Avenue and 24th Street, maybe to use it for an access point for a garage, who knows. The prospect of the Jeanne d'Arc building being put on the market and potentially being combined would create an astonishingly huge and out of scale potential development lot. So that is just a concern that, I mean, even without the Jeanne d'Arc building, the notion of what could potentially go up on the corner of 25th and 24th and 8th is concerning, even to me over here on 25th Street in terms of light and air. If there's any possibility that somebody could get wind of this and say, hey, let's combine the Jeanne d'Arc lot, which is equally huge, with the corner lot in conjunction with the air rights from the 25th Street lot, could lead to potentially a huge overdevelopment situation.
Thank you very much for that information.
Sure.
Anyone else from the public wanting to speak on this issue?
Joe, I just wanted to clarify, some of the block associations were on the call and they said for me to confirm that I made a mistake. Breaking ground, it's the Christopher is the name of the building.
Yes.
That was the one. I don't know if that was mentioned, but they asked me to clarify. Sorry about that.
So Joe, I think you were asking me to report back next month. We of course will keep the board up to speed on developments here, and happy to come back next month.
Thank you so much, Carl. And definitely can you try to reach out to Breaking Ground as a possible partner here.
Got it.
Okay, everybody. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for attending. And
Thank
we'll
you.
and just come back to our committee so you can get updates on this, okay?
Thank you so much.
And for new and old items, new and old business. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? Oh, okay, good. I just wanted to bring up 3 things. Get a night update, update the committee on Stardom Hall, and the public about Stardom Hall. And a question that has come up a couple of times to me, and I just wanted to bring it here to inquire. I'm going to ask the question first. I think that's the easiest. So a couple of people have asked me about the space for those who live in congregate shelter and the unused space that's in the community. Well, let's just say everywhere in the city, but can the space be retrofitted so that it's more individualized? Does that make sense, Joe? My question to you.
Yes, well, there can be some degree of retrofit, but that requires a plan. And to our knowledge, the city of New York is not doing anything to plan on how to bring people back to this type of shelter so far. We haven't heard anything like that at all.
Okay.
Betty?
Yeah, Paul and I have talked about this idea, and he couldn't be at the meeting tonight, but we're very keen on the city or someone looking at the spaces that the homeless people now who are in the temporary shelter hotels, that perhaps if the places they came from could be retrofitted so that they were safe enough from coronavirus, then some of the hotel residents could be, moved back into those retrofitted buildings. Obviously, it would take a huge effort because you need money to retrofit those buildings. I even had the idea that maybe the city could launch a contest among architects as to how to cleverly reconfigure these buildings, but it seems a shame. I assume they're sitting around empty, and I've said before, I think that the city needs to make a plan for this. So I'm glad that you brought it up, Maria.
Well, one of our problems though, Betty, is that none of those shelters are in our district. And we have to think about a bit, to what degree are we getting, should we be engaging with city policy in other districts also? I know it's connected, but is it going to be effective?
So Joe, we do have some relocated, some of our normal shelter residents have been relocated away from us. And so they have not returned back, 52nd Street. I don't know about BRC, but I'm assuming that they also had been relocated.
Jessica just noted that there are some tenants at BRC on site, right, Jessica?
And then of course, we already had shelter residents that were more permanent in hotels like the Skyline, the families that were there. So I do think that asking that question makes sense because we have permanent shelter residents that have been moved away and their spaces are empty and their spaces have been or are fitted for the services that are needed. And I think it's something not to ignore just because our density problem on 36th Street is about reducing that density and sending some folks away from there, but it's more about we have these buildings that already are homes for our shelter residents, and they are not being used at all. How do we think about being able to use the space that already is intended for those homes in a way that keeps them COVID safe?
Are those spaces in District 4?
Well,
No.
I have one down the block on 52nd Street. The ladies there have been moved away. I don't even know where they went.
No, do you mean well, so Betty, let's just talk about this. for
It's a
second.
little hard to hear you, Joe.
Okay, sorry. So first and foremost, they're not homes. These are shelters. Let's make that clear, because shelter is a temporary circumstance. And that's why there's all this compromise in a shelter that is either dormitory, shared rooms, or open rooms for people to sleep in. Think about it for a moment physically. How do you make that COVID safe? You don't, because inherently a shelter is a shared space and they have lots of program spaces and also for activities and counseling and things. I think the problem is if we discuss this, we're actually talking about undoing that which is purposefully built. And the city is using FEMA money to rent these temporary rooms. That's why it's able to do it. So it's not as if there's a huge city budget to say, let's go back now and take a congregate shelter and reimagine the whole thing when the city of New York isn't even managing the circumstance we're in. So I just am very reluctant to get us into I'm afraid it gives them a way out to say, oh, we're going to study this for you, whatever, and then nothing will happen. So Katie, I see you're shaking your head. Can you add in on this, please?
Yeah, a couple things. So I think, Joe, you're absolutely right. And as many of you know, I am on the board of BRC, but there are lots of details I don't know about BRC. So I'm not speaking at all specifically about BRC right now, but absolutely, congregate settings are designed specifically to be congregate settings. And if you wanted them to be, safe like a hotel, in other words, everybody being able to have their own room and their own bathroom, then just by definition, the space alone, you would be able to have far fewer people. And it would be a huge cost. And indeed, I'm on a board of a different organization that is a women's residence, and it is sort of like a dormitory, right? In the sense that everybody has their own room, and then there are group bathrooms at the end of the hall.
Shared bathrooms, right.
Right. And the idea of like, oh, why don't we see if we can like reconfigure things and do all the cost of putting an individual bathroom for each person? I mean, those are massive costs. So, and then also to Joe, to your point about like, one of the points is that sometimes people really need not to be alone in a room, right? Especially if they're having a variety of mental health issues or whatever else. So the idea that we would say to them, listen, we really want you to design it in a way, to incur these massive costs so that then they can be alone in a room is sort of ignoring the entire point of why it was designed in a congregate way to begin with. And I think the costs are so massive that it's sort of like saying, I don't know. It is so pie in the sky in a way, like, hey, do you have millions and millions of dollars to design it in a way that wouldn't even be structured towards your goal?
Tens of millions of dollars.
Exactly. So it just seems like.
Isn't the city spending millions of dollars?
They're
having
spending
temporary
spending
shelters in
federal money.
hotels?
They're spending federal money for a disaster purpose. That's why they can do it.
So Joe, when does the FEMA money run out?
Well, ready? We don't know. We can certainly ask, because part of this issue is the city's taking a short-sighted point of view. But I think what Katie's point is, let me give you the example. In some of the Clinton housing supported buildings, we have studios, we also have shared apartments, because certain people actually react better when they're sharing a space because they have lots of issues and loneliness and stuff going on, and that helps socialization and people like watch after each other, right? That's a deliberate choice. We've had this issue now, people sharing bathrooms and kitchens with COVID. So now we have quarantine apartments at the same time, if God forbid if somebody gets sick. But it doesn't remove the underlying issue that in a congregate shelter or a shared apartment, that's a choice you're making on purpose in order to help people better themselves, move ahead in their lives and work through their issues, right? So we're really in a mess. Okay, I want to say that. We're in a mess here. We've taken people shelter residents who need to be in a broader setting with a lot of connection, engagement, supervision, mental health, physical health stuff, and put them in little rooms, and they're all among themselves. And so they're not being engaged with in the same way that they would be in a congregate setting, and you can catch things earlier. There's a health issue or something going on, or addiction issues, whatever. So basically this model is exacerbating the social service needs. I felt that for a while, right, Katie? I'm not making this up.
True, though I also want to be really clear that you're absolutely right. I think the providers themselves didn't want people to be alone, in all these different rooms. But at the same time, they are contractually obligated to be providing the services. So they are figuring out ways to provide the services, but it is definitely tricky.
It depends upon the provider.
Say it again.
Depends upon the provider and their competency.
Fair enough. And again, absolutely, I can't speak to all sorts of things. But yeah, so absolutely, it's trickier in when everybody's in individual rooms. And I think us suggesting it would, to be honest with you, I think it would sound naive, because I think it sort of, it ignores the whole point of why they're congregate to begin with.
I'm glad we aired this out though, because this became a discussion during the budget discussion or whatever it was. And I was like, I don't know how to deal with this. So,
Well,
so Betty,
thank you for my education, my free education about congregate living. I guess we'll see what happens on 36th Street and 37th Street.
I mean, I'll give you an example, Betty, like the Jeanne d'Arc residence and Leo House, all of these things were a cheaper, easier way for people to afford. And they also socialized and created all kinds of relationships. These women's residences were all over the city. They've been closed one after the other. So it's a very common thing that there's a reason these things are done. And, you know, we're now in a mess because of the congregate shelter stuff. It's really a mess.
Anyway, thank you.
Maria, do we have any? Oh, sorry, Jessica.
I was just gonna comment on the FEMA stuff, and my experience on a bunch of contracts right now that are being FEMA funded is that the city was really, you know, forced or needed to act, didn't know how it was gonna pay for things, just did it, and then been retroactively going back and trying to find dollars to pay for everything. So I don't even think, I mean, Carl or maybe someone else who has access to city conversations around this may have better insight, but my sense is that like even the city doesn't really know what's ultimately going to be funded from FEMA or from city dollars, that this is just like, this is true emergency, hoping it all works out. But there's definitely not like a lane or a line to have a conversation about like, oh, what if we did this differently? Like people are scrambling just to get it done.
Yeah, I can support that in the contracts Clinton Housing has for homeless services and mental health services. During COVID, they just said, apply for funds for all the PPE, the transport, all the things you had to do that were not part of your normal operation. We just got paid for things that were done and complete back in June. I mean, like you had to advance all kinds of money because of course when the trains weren't running, you had to get people back and forth to work, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of sort of making it up as we're going along here. And the city is in a deep hole and we're going to keep on working through it. I guess that's all you can do. Maria, do we have any other items on the agenda for tonight?
I just wanted to mention some good news about Stardom Hall and then just get a NYCHA update. So the good news about Stardom Hall, I'm going to just go back to, I know you guys have worked with Lantern Community Services for years, long before my time on the board, but I'm just going to go back to October 2019. Lantern Community Services came to our committee because they wanted to be part of the budget priorities for additional security. There were tenants and some community members who, there were a couple of tenants and some community members who actually did not want that to happen. They felt like there was more issues than additional security could actually resolve. So what happened was we started having, actually I should say, Lantern started holding CAB meetings once again. They also came back in January to our committee. They were supposed to discuss how they were addressing the concerns that the tenants brought up and community members. That's not what really went down. That's not what really happened. And so we continued engaging them in the CAB meetings, and our committee wrote a letter, which is on the website, and they responded and wrote a letter stating, which I shared with you guys. I don't think it's on the website, but I shared it with you all, so I hope you read it. If not, take a look at it. Indicating the changes they were going to make to security, for example, having cameras outside of the building, decreasing outsourced security, hiring within their own team, resident managers who you can train them. Like for example, with de-escalation techniques, how to better engage the clients. They talked about collaborating with WIN, which is the shelter across the street, the women's shelter, when they return. They talked about which is also helpful with the disruptive tenants that they had at their site. They talked about offering housing alternatives to their disruptive tenants, utilizing housing court, also HRA agreeing to give more appropriate referrals for their location. And as you can see in their letter, they indicated a date by when they were going to make some of these changes. Everything that they have indicated in their letter has occurred. In addition, they reported on the number of complaints they had received in the past. I believe it was 1 or 2 months, and there were none. So things were going well, and even the tenants who were in the CAB meeting, shared that things were going well. So much so that our next meeting is going to be in January, and they'll give us an email update for December. So progress.
Maria, can I make a comment? I must say, since I've been personally involved with this, I can speak to the fact that it has calmed down. The building does not have that number of people in front who create a problem. So from the outward side, as a community member, I see a difference, which is a good thing. I just continue to hope that the intake process is properly used so that they use they choose selectively the people who come to this particular location.
Well, not even selectively, they just choose people appropriate for independent living.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Could you also note, Maria, why there are some people not there and what happened? Why they're not there?
2 of the most disruptive tenants are currently incarcerated, and it seems like they might be there for some time. They have upcoming court dates, but it just seems like they will be there for some time. So I think that that's helped bring some calm.
Yes.
But they're, and in addition to the changes that they're making.
Well, all things together.
Someone else.
Leslie, thank you for sharing your personal experience, because I know for you, this has been really difficult on the block. So glad to hear that that the letter is not just a letter, but that you are actually experiencing that there's been some positive result.
For sure. Thank you, Maria. And Joe.
No, Maria's handled this one because I just could not manage it anymore after the first go. I did the first go with them. Thank you very much. So a quick update on Chelsea NYCHA. That's what I'd like to do.
Yes, thank you.
So Hector and I will speak to this. Chelsea NYCHA working group recommenced really in August, right, Hector? We started again after a huge hiatus because of COVID. And the group has been meeting remotely like this ever since, both the full group and the subcommittees. It, of course, is much more challenging. There are over 65 people in the Chelsea NYCHA working group, so it's much harder to manage. But I'm really happy to note that the group is starting the actual tenant outreach on the whole overall plan in the beginning of December. This was scheduled to start unbelievably the 3rd week of March. So it was of course postponed, and then we tried to figure out what to do again in the summer, and just figuring out the logistics of how to get 2,100 tenants involved in Elliott, Chelsea, and Fulton, and really engaging with them. So it's really gone into high gear. Hector can speak about it in a moment, but I will note that the other thing we've achieved is that we've really come to a consensus on how to proceed, both with tenant rights and protections and tenant engagement, and stated specifically that without the tenant's rights and protections and without tenant engagement actually put into whatever proposal happens, that the financing part we will not support. We will support it only if those things are built in. And it has been a very, very long go, and a combination of this RAD program with all these protections for tenants, and in infill and a mixed income way on multiple sites, the West Chelsea Affordable Housing Fund. We have pulled every single tool we can come up with. And the most important thing to announce to the committee, demolition is now 100% off the table. It is not going to happen. It is not being supported. And NYCHA has agreed, but even better, the deputy mayor and the chair of the housing authority have agreed demolition's off the table. So that took quite a moment to get to, I gotta say. And now it's going to really working with tenants to understand the complexity of a very, very major plan. So Hector, take it away and talk a bit about your thoughts on this.
I'm very happy that we've gotten this far. I mean, it was quite a struggle trying to pull it all together after we shut down for a while there. And you know, there were some people that we were at odds with, but we all finally came to a common consensus that we needed to get this done because it's been dragging on for a while, and the buildings and the living conditions still continue to be dilapidated, and conditions are getting worse. Crime rate's gone up. Everything's gotten worse, obviously. So it was really important that we get this done as quickly as possible rather than drag this on even more due to any kind of differences or any kind of wrong misinformation that's been put out there. And that's all we've been trying to do, is try to get the right information into the right hands here, which is the residents, and to make them understand that this is not something bad for them. This is actually something really good for the future of our homes here. And gentlemen like Joe, who's taken to the helm of a lot of these committees, has helped put this together along with a lot of the elected officials, and we owe them a lot. So hopefully, as Joe said, we're moving pretty quickly right now. So we're going to hopefully start getting these Zoom meetings together, sessions together in the beginning of December. We're going to do a dry run and see how everything shakes out, and then hopefully we'll have some really good results hopefully by the end of December, and probably may drag on until a little to the January, but we're getting there.
January.
Yeah, I think that's more realistic. But we're finally getting there.
Are you guys, is the working group meeting weekly still?
Oh, we're meeting.
Many more than just a week.
Yeah, we have
More than
subcommittees.
2 and 3 meetings
Yeah.
per week.
Oh
Yeah,
my.
plenty of meetings to go around, believe me. So we're meeting at least 3 or 4 times a week, most of us, on top of everything else.
Well, thank you for all of that work, Betty, Hector, Joe.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, Betty, I'm sorry. Can you add on this, Betty?
Oh, just to say, I think it's rather miraculous because this group is made up not only of elected officials, community board people, residents, resource people from other nonprofits, mayor's office, and can't list them all right now, but it's actually an intense effort to get a consensus among these diverse people, and it's happening. It is really happening, and it's quite beautiful. I think that there was some talk that December 17th, maybe there will be a presentation
Yeah,
to the full community board.
The community board is trying to schedule now with Jesse a community meeting. We felt it was important to do that after all this is rolled out to the tenants. We don't want tenants finding out second, they have to find out first.
Right.
But the thing that I'm very happy with is that we started out with something that people really hated, demolition and privatization. And now we've taken that, the demolition's gone, the privatization will be there, but only with a not-for-profit partner. But it will not be, as the city has done it before, it will be embedded numbers and numbers of protections that the tenants association and the tenants demanded to be in as part of it. And as we went through it, we kept saying, we will not proceed on any kind of financing without these protections and engagement built in. Specifically, like the tenants are going to be involved in the design, the construction, the management going forward. How do you do that? And we just kept holding out for it. And what I'm very happy to announce is that part of this is using, also the city initially proposed a need of $344 million for both developments. They did not include putting new heating systems in. The tenants went apeshit for the right reason on this. And from our end, we insisted that we had to increase that budget because, as you know, if you're in Elliott, Chelsea, or Fulton, it's all central steam from Con Ed. There's one main break and all the buildings go down, or 5 buildings go down at once. Instead, there will be individual heating systems in each building and new ones that are efficient. And that was basically, we struck that agreement with the chair of the Housing Authority in these subcommittee meetings that we had back and forth. And it's the kind of thing that they listened. They didn't, I will tell you honestly, a lot of times, Betty, they didn't like what we were saying at all. But we sort of just kept bringing them down a road on it. And the last thing is, for any of the new housing that gets built, originally the idea was 80-20, 80% market, 20% low income. Instead, it'll be 50-50, 50% market, 50% low, moderate, and middle. So there's a good economic integration here, as opposed to saying we're bringing more luxury housing onto the NYCHA campuses. People really felt strongly about that. And I will tell you, and Hector can attest to this, until last week, we were still having that conversation, although we thought we settled 5 months ago. So.
And just to add to that, as an added bonus, what I've been seeing is that NYCHA has been taking some of the, a lot of the ideas from the work group and utilizing it. I mean, I could see some mirroring going on between the new blueprint they're trying to lay out for the rest of the NYCHA development. So there is a lot of good coming from this work group, not just for LHLC and Fulton, but it looks like they're adapting it in little pieces here and there to their other projects, which is, I think, is wonderful. And I think moving forward, once we're all said and done, we can try to, actually, hopefully they'll use the ideas moving forward a lot more, maybe even the whole proposal that we have. That's the hope here.
And the last part to note is one of the sites for housing, in order to bring, remember, when they build infill housing, it's to bring money into the project. So that raises roughly $100 million. One of the sites is the Hudson Guild. Hudson Guild is going to get entirely rebuilt as part of this and expanded. So
I want to give a shout out to Joe on the capital financing. I'm in awe of him putting together the numbers of the sites and this is incredibly complicated thing and the sources of funding. So I just have to say that.
Thank you.
I have to echo that too, Joe. I mean, honestly, the number crunching we've done is like phenomenal. I couldn't wrap my head around the whole thing in the beginning, but you've made it into such digestible information that I think we have a really good shot of having everybody be on board once we present everything. So I'm very happy about it.
Thank you very much.
Well done, everybody. Awesome.
Thank you. So we're going to be hearing a lot more about this. There'll be a full community meeting. We expect lots of people to scream, yell, and say it's horrible, and that we're a bunch of capitalists, and that we're communists, and that we're socialists. I mean, everyone will be called everything. So, but it's when you make big change like this, a goal we've never forgotten is that the Chelsea NYCHA buildings need full renovation. They need new bathrooms, kitchens, mechanical systems and heating systems, and windows and all kinds of stuff. It's not a minor thing, and that's our goal. So it's gonna be hard, and it's a long-term project too. It's not gonna happen in a day.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Please.
Wait, hold on. Carl Wilson has his hand raised.
Oh, Carl Wilson, bring him back in.
Carl?
Sorry, I don't mean to keep everybody here much longer, but I just really wanted to echo the Herculean effort of Joe, Betty, and Hector. I mean, they've been going to multiple, like at least 3 or 4 meetings at times a week on this, and they are long meetings and sometimes very contentious. So I just want to echo the kudos, but also I wanted to give some props to Maria as well for the Stardom Hall work. She's been my partner in these meetings for well over a year now, and we really have come, I think, a very long way on that one. And although the two disruptive folks that are unfortunately incarcerated, as she said, there was a third that has been identified, and it was just a really good story with a happy ending where this person, Stardom Hall was able to have this woman accept another form of housing, and we understand that she's actually much better. She, it's a much better fit, and she is accepting treatment and doing very well. So it just speaks to what we can do when we all sit around a table together and work together. So kudos to this committee and the co-chairs especially.
And thank you, Carl. I forgot to mention your name before. This is Les. Thank you.
Well, Carl, we clearly persevere in Hell's Kitchen. There's no question about that.
And we have no choice.
Amen.
And Carl's
All right,
part of
everybody. Thanks so much. Good night.
Thanks. Good night, all.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.